Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast, episode number 109, I think something like that. We're in the shop here. Tasso stopped by, and we've got DP as well. And the reason, or the topic for the podcast today, we had some big news from Subaru that's a little bit, well, I think unexpected, but kind of surprising in some ways. I wanted to talk about it. Subaru has replaced their global CEO and the North American CEO. So Tom Dahl has been basically running Subaru of America since, I think, 2009. And then the head of Subaru globally has also been replaced. And the reason that Subaru said that they did that is because they wanted to focus on the shift to electrification in both cases. And what's particularly interesting is Toyota recently did the exact same thing. They changed out their CEO for a new CEO, and somebody else. Both people that are taking charge of the company were promoted internally from Toyota and Subaru respectively, but with the same purpose to focus on the switch to electrification. And it's a little bit of an interesting, kind of surprising change. I figure it might be worth it, or it would be worth a discussion from us for what does that kind of mean, and maybe kind of think about what does this mean for the future. What do we think Subaru is going to do with all of this? Precursor to this is in January of this year, Subaru did come out and announce that. So we have the Solterra, but that was going to be their only electric car. But in January they announced they wanted to have to add several more EVs to their lineup by 2025, which is, we're already March of 2023. That's not very long. And the rumors about that are that they're going to be working with Toyota. So Toyota and Subaru are now kind of putting a lot of eggs in this basket, and there's probably going to be a lot of co-platforms between Toyota and Subaru. So, with all of that set up front, what is you guys' initial thought with this big change from Subaru?
I'm curious, a little bit worried. Obviously coming from the performance standpoint of what we do, what does that mean for us? We can still make them go steer better, brake better, and all that. But yeah. I'm real partial to the internal combustion engine sounds and the things that go with it. I think electric motors are really cool, and it'll get there. But the technology is gonna have to really ramp up if they want to make a performance car. If they're going after Tesla's market for the performance sedan with the STI, or are we gonna start with a cross-track EV? Where are we going is still to be determined. But I'm partial to the the ICE part of that whole market still, that I think is not just our bread and butter, but that's just something that I really am fond of.
It's kind of the fun factor.
Yeah.
Right? The fun factor of the car to a large extent. I don't know, Tasso?
I went back and forth on this a couple times, even just on the drive in here or since showing up here today. The first thought I had was, who cares?
Yeah.
I don't think Subaru's really made a performance car, a good nuts out performance car, for 20 years.
Okay.
18 years.
18 years.
What is it? 2003.
2023.
16 years.
So 16 years.
16 years, something like that. With the end of the GD, they stopped making performance cars.
Okay.
And they started making fast sedans, fast family cars, whatever kind of thing,
Yeah.
Okay. And that's obviously with all due Tasso cynicism. And then I came in here and I sat in your 2022, 23 WRX, whatever it is.
22, yeah.
22 WRX that you guys have in here as a shop car now, and I thought to myself, this is pretty comfy. This is a nice car. Nicer than the GDs weren't especially nice cars. It's those cars, what I consider the last performance tuner cars, were not good cars from a car standpoint. right? Especially you look at like the Mitsubishis, right?
That's where
junk.
The
right?
interior, the comfort, the quiet, whatever. That's what they completely sacrificed and cheaped out on to bring the performance to the engine and to the drivetrain.
Like if you're cruising around with an interior still in your GD, why bother? Just strip it. It's not any worse if it's just bare metal. It's the same car.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I'm not getting paid to do this, but I get paid for my cynicism, so which is why I'm
Sure.
Which is why I'm whatever. So then I sat in that car. I thought, like, damn, that's a pretty good car. Like, I would drive that car.
You should. Well, you take it around the block.
Well, so I've driven it around the street. Not that one, but another one. I've driven it, like just up and down the street before, and hearing from your guys, it sounds like it's pretty fun on the track too, even if it's a little bit dampened, right? Like sensory wise dampened, right? Like it's quiet, it's muffled, it's squishy, all these kind of things, right? So
a little bit.
It
is.
A
little bit.
Like
you don't have to wear earplugs in it, right?
You don't have to wear earplugs.
So,
that is true.
It's dampened a bit. So even with all that stuff, they said it's still like the car sticks well. It's good. Yeah. It's fun. It's got a lot of technology going on, a lot of interesting engine management stuff. So that swayed, the point of this anyways, is that swayed kind of my thought process over to, well, shit, maybe this does matter. Because there is still some okay stuff coming out.
So there's a couple interesting, I guess, maybe like previous footnotes that at this point, probably like their significance is more unknown. I mean, one thing that we know is that there's no STI coming out of this car. So there's some people that are wondering if Tom Dahl is the one that prevented the STI from coming out. I don't think that's the case. And in fact, I would guess it might actually be the opposite, because right before the STI got killed off, we finally got the first S car in America. We got the S209. And I'd have to assume that Tom Dahl was probably a big part of getting that over here. One of the interesting things that's come out as they've announced this is that America accounts for 75% of Subaru's global sales. So American market is buying 3/4 of all the Subarus that are made everywhere. But only now have we gotten one S model.
Yeah.
And a lot of the high performance stuff has been kept in Japan. There's probably a lot of other reasons.
And it wasn't that way for a long time, right? When they first brought the WRX over, there wasn't really a market, right? And until they created the market. I guess there was a tinderbox waiting to go off.
About Tasso is the 2002 WRX, 2003 WRX, when they first brought the WRX over.
Right.
It sold out. They did not think that there was a market here. They didn't think that there would be any interest for the STI.
Right.
They didn't think that the WRX would sell, so they brought it over, and then it sold out the first 2 years of production.
Right. And that's not on Subaru. I mean, I guess, right? They're a business, and their business is to do more business, so it is on them a bit, whatever. But America didn't tell anybody that they wanted fun, fast, small cars, right? America had said for decades, we want big.
Well, and even back then, like there was not a car like the WRX here. There was not a 4-door sedan or wagon, all-wheel drive with a turbocharged engine. I mean, there just wasn't. Huh?
The DSMs?
The DSM had been around certainly for 2 generations, but it just never really. I don't think it ever caught enough.
No, they were a niche market.
It was a niche market. They never really thought it was going to be a mass market.
Right, and I think that is what people read at the time. To say, why bother bringing, your long history of STI turbo sweet cars with rally lineage?
But when they did bring it over, it was a home run, and it was like, exactly. I guess people want this.
Which is why I can still find parts for my shitty old GDs, is because there were a lot of them bought and sold.
Absolutely, it was the best selling until I think the 15.
Right. So, I forget where I was even going with this. Oh, you were talking about bringing the S cars over, right? And is there still a...
Well, and so I guess my point there is just that I think that, there was maybe some movement in this direction, but of course, I think Subaru, as all auto manufacturers right now, are realizing, hey, we've got to kind of course correct here. The market is changing. And
sure.
I think the hard thing for us to kind of remember sometimes is that Subaru, from a car manufacturer standpoint, Subaru is really small.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're a small manufacturer, and with an electric car, that's a complete change I mean, you might be able to build an electric car on the same chassis. There's some manufacturers that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the technology to make the car run and all of that stuff, it's all different.
And also remember, most of those 75% of sales is not WRXs.
Right.
Too.
Yeah,
It's
we're talking Outbacks and Foresters.
Ascents,
Yes.
which is, I think that they've been working toward this probably for some time with the hybridification of the family cars.
Well, yeah, and hybrids seem to be only getting more available and stronger demand.
Yeah, more
Right.
prevalent too.
More
And then
prevalent.
there's also government pressures, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the Europe has their mandate. I forget what year it is now. 2030. No more internal
2030,
combustion.
2035, something like
Something
that.
like
No
Yeah,
more internal combustion cars sold there. And Subaru is not the first manufacturer, because this is the next thought I had in my uppy downy thought process on whether or not I cared about this announcement or what Subaru was doing anymore. Porsche, right?
Mhm.
Porsche left internal combustion motorsports a couple years ago.
Mhm.
Right.
And then came out with a beautiful tribute to them as like a walking off into the sunset, wave goodbye with a 919 Evo,
Yeah.
right? And then we're like, you know what? Now they're pretty cool. We'll come back a couple years later, and now they're, Porsche Penske with the IMSA cars, and so Porsche left and then came back. So I don't think that a manufacturer deciding to prioritize or put more stock into their electric vehicle lineup really even has all that much bearing on the motorsports side or tuner or enthusiast side of what they have going on, other than I think you get improved trickle down. I think.
So here's the thing. I actually think I think it's way more important, and I think, like Subaru, for instance, if they do not realize that they have to put a priority on that, even from an electric standpoint, I think that's a mistake, and I'll get into why here in a second. But the other piece of information that may or may not be relevant anymore now is, so I found this, and I've been trying to find it again, and I can't dig it up, but the head of Subaru Australia was in an interview and was quoted with saying, so like, Subaru announced that the next STI is going to be electric. Mm-hmm. We know that. They made that announcement very clearly when they announced that there was no more STI. The head of Subaru Australia said that there is not going to be an electric STI on the current platform. And he said that, so what that meant was that the electric STI, what they were slating this for, and this was back at the probably 2022 when the announcement came out, was 2030 for the electric STI. And so, like, when my feeling when if that was true at the time, is that's way too long. So the problem is, if Subaru doesn't have, like, they've taken away the STI, hey, we're going to do something electric, but if it's going to take 8 years, 7 years from now, 7, 8 years, they're losing so much of the enthusiast base if they wait that long to really kind of bring something that has a level of excitement to it. Mm-hmm. And like with the Solterra, like it seems to be mixed reviews. They had trouble with the launch. I mean, Subaru's, all car manufacturers have been affected by this chip shortage. Like there's all sorts of difficulties going on right now to produce these cars and get them out. But there's not very many Solterras out there. And when you look at a lot of the companies that are bringing out electric cars, it's so much easier to add power to an electric car than a gasoline powered car, especially now with emissions things. So like Tesla is kind of like the standard, the measuring stick for all of these cars, and it's like, if you want a sedan, you want like their Model Y, the wagon, like they basically make like 450 horsepower equivalent. Right. Like that's just the standard, and then you can get the performance,
more horsepower.
Yeah, just plug in and there it is.
And you look at, like, I mean, there are certainly the Chevy Bolt, which is just kind of more of a commuter car, and it's not designed to be fun or make power, but I mean, you have the Polestar 2, the i4 M50, BMW. Mm-hmm. All these cars are making 400, 500 effective or equivalent horsepower very easily, and then you get into like the lunacy of like the like the Taycan, the Audi e-tron RS.
Right. Which you're finally, because I mean Tesla may be the benchmark, but they're not really built for performance, right? They happen to be pretty quick. Right. And some people have figured out how to make them slow down a bit here and there or turn. but they're not really performance cars, right? There's no part of that car that's optimized for the driving experience.
But even SUVs are now becoming performance cars. Right. So like the Rivian, that truck does ridiculous 0 to 60s.
Yeah, it does.
DP, because of your Typhoon heritage, there was Haggerty did a drag race where Rivian was pulling a Cyclone, so on a trailer, and it was faster than, I think it was a Raptor.
It was faster than the Raptor, which was insane.
But so like SUVs are now becoming like performance cars as well, and the more they're very expensive vehicles, no question. But like all of a sudden, like the performance standard that they're setting is a pretty darn high bar.
It is, and I think echoing what you're saying, Tasso, like this might be a jumping off point with like where they're at with the Tesla sedan and all these is okay. We hit here. What do we need to do to make it better, faster, stronger, harder as an actual enthusiast's sports car? So I'm excited for that side of things.
And I think that Subaru, being a small company, if they completely lose sight of that, then that there's going to be nothing to set them apart. But if they actually focus on that and make these cars more engaging, even though it's an electric car, then all of a sudden now there's a possibility there where that can actually be what sets Subaru apart.
Right.
Yeah, you can't beat them to the accessibility, usability of a Tesla, because Tesla already beat them there. You can't beat them to the F-150 Lightning, because they already beat them there.
Yep.
You can't beat them to just dropping a nostalgia name in your face and hoping that sells cars, because Ford already did that with the Mustang, right? You can't you can't just sit on a laurel if you're Subaru, or try and reinvent some wheel here, other than making the people's performance electric car. Maybe is the only.
Maybe, but like I'm thinking here of the STI ERA, this electric concept that they showed, and they said that their goal is to get this thing out and try and set the Nürburgring lap time in like the 6-minute range and all this sort of thing. It makes 1,000 horsepower. It has 4 motors, 1 on each wheel, and especially with Subaru's all-wheel drive history, I think that focusing on a motor per wheel could be a real that could be significant to Subaru, because you could still say it's all-wheel drive because you have a motor at each wheel, instead of just 2 motors and then it goes into a gearbox and then you're driving a motor per axle. Because then Subaru could then lean into what you can do with those individual motor controls. I mean, if you look at Rivians and you watch anything of what a Rivian can do, like off-roading, because it has individual tire control, it's pretty crazy. And like, okay, now what do you get if you take that and you put it in an STI package that is for rallycross, for something for the street?
Look at what Vermont did with the current crop of nitro rallycross, E-class, whatever their class is called, the electronic ones.
The electric rallycross cars,
And they are good. I mean, they're good to watch.
And they're fast.
They're fast. Like, they're generally, their limitation is not power, it's how much wheel spin is efficient, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Call out drift dudes, you're not faster.
Right.
But so like the rallycross cars, right? They're not limited in their acceleration by power at all, right? They're entirely limited by he had too much wheel spin, so he's going slower now.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's the precedent is there for these things being, but I don't know.
It might be a moonshot.
Yeah.
I mean, to say that Subaru
I just went on my 5th roller coaster ride. My feelings about this whole thing. So because I was down and then I went up in the 22.
Yeah.
And I went down again because who cares? Because Porsche left and they came back. So whatever. And I went up again because and then I went right back down now because I don't know.
This is I think the thing is, like, you have to have, like, I think in the electric world you have to have something that has a little bit of excitement to it, like
100%.
a Solterra that is the size and weight of an Ascent, or maybe more than an Ascent, but it only makes 230 horsepower or whatnot. There's just not a lot of excitement there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that there's going to be. I haven't driven one yet. I'm curious to drive one just to see what it's like. But the pull, the draw to that kind of a platform, I don't know. I don't know yet what the draw to that platform is. But like Tesla's, it's obvious what the draw is to a lot of these is just it's a car that'll do 4 seconds, sub 4 seconds, 0 to 60 runs.
Yeah.
Just okay. Well, that's crazy. Like, and it just has to handle okay, but it's got kind of this dog and pony show that comes with it that brings this level of excitement to it, which is where I think some people that's all it takes to get some people to make the switch and try that.
Yeah.
And it's just like that's what you're, to a certain extent, that's what you're competing with. You're competing with these the Model 3, the Model Y that have this certain level of excitement. And then if you're going to be in a similar price point, similar vehicle, similar appearance, like what could Subaru bring to the table that would make people actually look back and forth and decide, okay, I'm going to go with this one.
I would hope that it would be the engineering and like rally history and motorsports history that they would bring to something like that has not been established by brand Tesla to date. I mean, I know that they're succeeding in like autocross and some things because there's some tunability that they have.
Right.
So I would hope that Subaru would bring that to the table and say, hey, we took this and we electrified it, and we hope to electrify you.
Right. And in the case of Subaru, what they're saying is that they're bringing in leadership at the top of Subaru globally and of Subaru America that is more interested in and excited about this move to electrification. So my hope would be that if they're bringing in people at the top that are excited, that they're going to think about bringing excitement to these platforms.
I hope they truly get STI involved, and they don't just Mustang Mach-E it and just...
Well, and honestly, like, even the Mach-E seems like it's got some... They did a lot of things right, and there's some parts of what the Mach-E does that people favor over the Tesla.
Sure. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure that whatever they come out with is fine.
But
I'm worried
both of them have some level of excitement and interest. They're not...
Sure.
It's not a golf cart with doors.
Which is sick, by the way. I've had more fun rides in golf carts than I've had in electric vehicles so far.
Shots fired. Okay.
But so far, I haven't driven that many electric vehicles.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking there's two directions here, right? And I think it's something that Tesla was really good because ultimately, like Apple, they're not a technology company; they're a marketing company, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that they nailed was the like that instant dopamine feedback kind of thing, right? Yeah. Whether that's I feel like I'm accelerating really fast, which is what most people affiliate with a fast car being, and then also like the same phenomenon that happened with like DLCs, like downloadable content on like video games, right? So you can download more power for your car.
It's the same car. Right? It just keeps getting better because they're like, oh, we figured this out, and here's this. Yeah.
Like the company that could figure out how to download skins for your car and have like just a computer screen around the whole car they're gonna mop up, right? Slay. Because then I could have like the gold one or the leopard one or this one,
Some car company has a car that will change color.
Yeah, there you go. Then they're working towards it.
BMW
Then they're
or Toyota,
right.
I think. Yeah.
But that's that.
They're moving in that direction.
That's that like dopamine feedback loop, right? But the weird thing about that, even though it's a completely different direction, is that's also what a lot of people like about working on their cars in the analog car era, right?
Yeah.
Is like that.
You can make it your own.
I did a thing. Yeah. I made it my own. I customized it. I made it faster. There's a result. And for me, I don't like working on cars all that much, but I like it when my car is better than it was before.
Totally.
So I put up with it.
Yeah.
First thing I'd say, basically to sum up your first point, I think, is if Subaru is going to make electric cars, they have to still make them Subarus. I think the more that they can make it so that you get in, you get behind the wheel, you drive the car in whatever conditions, it feels like a Subaru, the better, because that's what makes a Subaru. And I think where that's going to be a challenge is if they're working with Toyota to develop a lot of these platforms, and so then is it going to feel more neutral because it's one platform that is being used by both manufacturers, or can Subaru customize it to some extent to make it feel more like a Subaru?
I think the best thing to happen to Subaru recently is to work with Toyota, because Toyota's GR division, whatever the hell's going on with TRD or TGR or whatever the world of Toyota performance is right now, is just STIing themselves like nobody's business. And just putting out sick, cool stuff and carrying Subaru along with it at this point. And so that's... But like, to your point, that's my hope, is that it's not a car, whatever the future of Subaru is not a car based on DLCs. Like, do you want more gold little bumper caps, and now your Outback is an Outback X or whatever, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
Well, so not that stuff, but what I'm hoping is that it actually has a place where like there is tunability that's not paywall based or something like that.
So here's the biggest hope that I've gotten in that direction was when Tony from Turn Concepts was here, and we were talking about the Model 3 that he was running at Grid Life. And he talked about this thing called a party box, which it's a electronic box that you wire into the car. It doesn't give you control over the power of the car, but what it gives you control of is how the traction control works. So now you can actually customize how the traction control works. So, like, to a certain extent, from an enthusiast standpoint, I've said it before, I'll say it again, never bet against the aftermarket, because there are so many smart people out there, there's so many smart enthusiasts out there. Electric cars are just this new frontier. It's going to be different. There's no question it's going to be different, but there's smart people that are going to start figuring stuff out.
But that may be that. Hopefully, it doesn't end up like jailbroke phones, right? Where that's like the new emissions is like, well, we'd love to road league out or road past your, Tesla, but it looks like you had this piggyback wired in there, so you're no longer not emissions, but you figure like software compliant for road use or whatever.
Well, just traction control. I mean, I don't. I mean, it could be that
safety.
Safety, I mean, traction, but if you can optimize traction control, I mean, there's possibilities there.
And then the government says, so you think you're better than Tesla at optimizing traction control? You're not. It's not your life, young man. It's the public's life that you're putting in danger. You're going to run over this grandma and tell her that you did a better job than Tesla? Right. And so that's what I worry about, being too technology based. If you have a fun, fast electric car that still has stuff like coil springs, like knobs on the suspension to turn, like stuff like that, then there is still optimization. If it still takes a unit, brake assembly from a GR Yaris now fits on the ESTI, and so now these 10 years of GR Yaris technology can filter into this ESTI, and you can get your sick, aluminum hat rotors and stuff like that, and that's the hope. Because the other end, I think, is, do you want to pay for a cooler exhaust note on your inside speakers for your electric car?
So here, I think what's, in my opinion, the trap with electric cars is self-driving or auto drive or whatever, full self-driving, FSD or whatever. The Tesla is like putting a ton of eggs in that basket. Right. I think that's a trap with electric cars, especially for smaller manufacturers like, say, Subaru, because it's not easy. Like, to your point, Tasa, liability all of a sudden becomes huge because, like, okay, I'm in a parking lot. I'm going to tell the car to go. It knows where we're going, but it's driving. I'm just sitting here with my hands, like, I'm in the driver's seat, but I'm not putting my hands on the wheel.
And they're using AI to figure that out right now. Right. But AI is not Terminator. AI just guesses a lot of stuff wrong until it gets it right.
Right.
So it's not actually intelligent.
Right.
And there's... Oh man, I don't know. I'm going to go off on a tangent on self-driving cars and ethics and stuff like that.
It's worth mentioning right now. We cannot allow Skynet to become self-aware. I think we can all agree on that.
Or just let it happen, right?
No. But so here's my part. My point with the smaller manufacturers: don't worry about full self-driving. There's still plenty of us out there that want to just drive the car. Right. If you focus on trying to get the car to drive itself, then prioritizing what the driving experience is, it just, like, all of a sudden you can't put eggs in both of those baskets, because one system defeats the other. So if you focus on making a Subaru feel like a Subaru, and you focus on making an electric STI that feels like it's an STI, like this is what Porsche did with the Taycan. It's an electric car, but it still drives like a 911. Or the Audi e-tron RS, where it's basically the same chassis, but it feels like an Audi. Like, that's what Subaru needs to focus on. Don't worry about any kind of self-driving anything.
Yeah.
Focus on the driving experience and what it's like to get behind the wheel of this electric car, and make sure that it feels like a Subaru.
It needs to feel connected. That's my problem with, even my Prius has absent steering because it's electric, and so it just doesn't feel like I'm on the road or doing anything. And then when I hop in the Forester, like I did this weekend, I was like, God, this car drives really well. I need to drive it more because, to toss over your point again, I made it what it is. I made it better than it was, and so I enjoy the hell out of that experience of driving it. It's like I need that feeling in a new electric Subaru like across the platform.
And to me, like, you have so many of these other auto manufacturers that are focusing on automation, and they're losing the driver experience. If you come in and you focus on the driver experience, and like the new WRX has got electric steering, but it's got the dual pinion electric steering. So your steering wheel is connected to the rack. You're getting all of that feedback uninterrupted from the rack to the steering wheel. The electric drive motor is on the other side of the rack, so like there can be assistance, but all of the feedback still comes through the wheel. It actually can change like what the weight of the steering feels like, but you still get the feedback. And so like something like that, like that's the rack that needs to be in an electric car, because you get the feedback still. You still have that connection. Like Lexus now, I think it's Lexus, has now got an e-steering car where it has a yoke steering wheel like the Model S, but there's no physical connection between the steering wheel and the rack. So it's all completely artificial on both ways. Like that to me is 100% the wrong way.
Oh, no.
And that's where there's all the technology involved, which is all the development cost. So Subaru, don't fall into that trap. Focus on the driving experience, and there's going to be people that actually still want to drive cars. And that's what we're looking for.
Sim racers all around the world right now going, that's fine. I get tons of feedback. It's direct drive, bro.
Which is actually pretty amazing.
It totally translates to the real world.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're getting better and better. Like that's a whole nother discussion. But that's the irony is like all the simulators are trying to make this artificial thing feel as real as possible, and then the real ones, they're going as far away from that as they can, to the point where they're completely disconnecting the steering wheel from the rack. They're removing all of the driver experience.
What's the company that makes all that video game stuff? Just say one. I just need it for my joke.
Oh, Fanatec?
Fanatec.
Yeah.
Like Fanatec right now, it's just like, it's only a matter of time before you mount a Fanatec upgrade in your ESTI to get better feedback from your steering wheel.
Oh, it could come to that point.
I'm going to need royalties, Fanatec, by the way, on that deal you just made with Ferrari or whoever. It was
Lexus,
my idea. Timestamp. I don't know, St. Patty's Day just happened, so it's...
21st today.
Is it the first day of spring?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Spring sprung.
Yeah.
But yeah, so on March 21st, 2023, Fanatec, it was my idea. If you don't
OTC
pay me,
Racing, Tasso.
Yeah, I'm gonna...
Yep.
I don't know. I'm gonna enforce.
That's right.
Whatever that means.
All right.
Yeah. Shit, I was gonna say something. It was a really good point. I don't know what it was. No.
Force
I don't think
feedback
it... Oh, no. Full self-driving. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
And I think they were probably a little bit just wishing in the... Well, I don't know. I don't have a saying for this. But I think we're just dropping in a bucket here.
But from an enthusiast standpoint, like there's going to be people that want to drive.
That's what we can hope for, but that's not, I think, one, what the government wants, and the government doesn't care what enthusiast wants, and then not the future of automobiles on the road. So then what it comes down to is
maybe
if we have our pastime, just like go-karts or golf or whatever, there'll be places where we're allowed to do our hobby in a controlled place.
I think that's why there will always be, like, for the GD Subarus, the classic Subaru rally cars, for motorsports, that will always be around, because there will always be a place for enthusiasts to use their cars. But the question is, like, okay, it doesn't benefit Subaru to have a really strong enthusiast base as much for, like, a 20, 30-year-old platform as it does to have interest in a current platform.
Right.
That they're currently building and actively selling.
So the hope is that they make an ESTI track model, which is not registered for road legality, a white car thing that's available just like you go get your pings at Big Five to go golfing, you go get your ESTI track model to go to your car course instead of the golf course on the weekends.
So here's my question. Here's what I was going to say. Like, to me, what this move from Subaru means, I think and I hope, especially with them saying that they're going to have more electric models even by 2025, which means it almost has to be something that Toyota had in development that they're probably just going to put a Subaru badge and maybe slightly rework on, because that's no time to develop a car. I mean, it's 2023. If you're going to basically show it in 2024 and you can buy it in 2025, like that is unbelievably fast development. But I hope what this means is that they are going to come out with the electric STI soon. In my opinion, Subaru, if you're listening, you have to release the electric STI by 2026, no later than 2027. I think you cannot take any longer than that, and you have to release information about it as soon as possible to let us know what you're working on, because otherwise people are going to look at all these other cars and they're just not going to care anymore. Now I'm going to go one step further and say the good news, Subaru, is you already have it. This STI ERA, that's the next STI, and you just need like 1,000 horsepower, four motors.
It's gotta be a wagon.
It'll be a hatch, yeah.
The ERA is the next STI. You already have it. You've already designed it. You just need to tell us that this is going to be it. 2026. Yeah, do a hatch after.
It'll be a heavy Yaris with a Subaru badge.
Oh, wow. That little car though with that kind of oomph would be.
Yeah, it'll have 2,000 pounds of batteries and a screen this big for your iPhone to hook up to.
Yes.
Well,
you'll drive it you'll swipe to drive it.
Just text the whole time.
Right. So sarcasm aside, the reason I say that is because if that was the car, I mean, it looks cool. Yes. It has 1,000 horsepower. Like Subaru gets in its own way a lot when it comes to like power and performance because they don't want to release something that is crazy like that. Like. And Subaru, you got to get out of your own way and just release it. Because right now, you can buy a Model S Plaid or the Lucid Air. There's like 3 different Lucid Airs that all make over 1,000 horsepower. I think one of the Lucids is now 1,200 horsepower equivalent. Woof. Like, they're already out there. There's only going to be more. Like, the Rivians are like 750 horsepower equivalent. Like, 1,000 horsepower right now, in terms of internal combustion engines, is just bananas.
It's the new 300.
But in terms of electric cars, like that's like if you're trying to build a car or design a car for 2026, 2027, like that's the ball. Like 700 to 1,000 horsepower equivalent with electric motivation is kind of for especially for something you're calling performance. That's kind of where you have to be aiming. I think you can't. It could be relevant at like 400 horsepower equivalent at that point because the Model 3, the Model Y performance, they're already there. They're already past that.
I just pictured it being an old 235 Dunlop.
Yeah.
Like the SPO1 or whatever the factory was for a long time.
That
would be a fun car, actually.
Or Star Spec. Dunlop Star Spec.
Yes.
No, like, is that what the OEM was for, like...
For a little while.
For a long time? Yeah, whatever it was. I just pictured that being a fun car. Like, the same thing as, like, the Prius or the its sister car, the BRZ, and how they made them fun cars by putting them on shitty tires.
Right.
That's the other option here that maybe is the best case scenario.
Maybe.
I don't know. The cynicism comes from being hurt a lot by auto manufacturers. We're damaged goods as car people. Well, they have an opportunity. I agree with you.
But that's the interesting thing with electric motivation is a lot of where it got really challenging with internal combustion engines is they couldn't give us the power that we wanted because it has to have some kind of fuel economy rating, and then it also has to meet emission standards.
But there's an equivalent for that, though, too. It has to have a range. And that is...
Like range anxiety?
Like what cup holders were 10 years ago?
Yep.
Like the shittiest part of a car that made the biggest difference in sales? Electric vehicle range is, I think, the number one thing people actually look for in an electric vehicle right now. Mm-hmm. Other than,
range and
am I a weirdo and is this interesting to me? Yeah, for us, that's true, right? But range, I think, is going to be number one for them.
So here's I've heard a lot of things through the years. Let's just call all of this rumor, and so get on the internet or leave it in the comments if I'm close to this or not. The reason that Toyota initially invested in Subaru, because Subaru was Fuji Heavy Industries, this is back when they were coming out with the Prius, because Fuji Heavy Industries had the best battery technology at the time.
Right.
So they wanted Fuji's battery technology to help the hybrids. The next generation, the next game changer for electric cars is going to be solid state electric batteries. Toyota is said to be one of the front runners. I think there's a company actually here in Lafayette, Colorado, like Solid something. There's a company in Europe that is funded by Volkswagen and I think BMW. And then Toyota is the third one that is supposedly all these three companies are at the forefront of the solid-state battery technology. Toyota had said that they wouldn't have a battery that would be ready to put in a car until like 2025 or 2027, but hopefully both of these moves from Toyota and from Subaru mean that their solid-state batteries are going to be available sooner rather than later. Once solid state becomes, standard or at least available, it should curb a lot of the range anxiety and the charging problems. So like if Subaru's working with Toyota and Toyota's at the forefront of this next generation of battery technology, that's not a bad partner to be working with.
And we need someone to come in and regulate charging standards.
Yeah.
So no more proprietary charging stations.
Not having an electric car and not knowing about all of the problems. Yeah. It sounds like they are significant out there, unless you have a Tesla. The Tesla charging network is solid. Everything else is
solid-ish, right? It's a meme.
Yeah.
But no, that's true. Right? Yeah. So once you get a standardized charging solution across platforms
and better batteries,
and you put charging stations at racetracks.
Yep.
Then you're making a step towards a potential for performance electric vehicles.
Yeah. The potential is there. Here's the last thing that I wanted to ask, and another reason, DP, why I wanted to have you on this, hybrids. So what Subaru has said is that they're going to look a lot more at hybrids. They actually made a statement, I think it was at the beginning of the year, first saying that they were not going to pursue plug-in hybrids anymore. But then now with this recent change, now they're saying that they're looking at hybrids more is a way to bridge the gap. Mm-hmm. My thought is it's all the same things that I've been saying about electric cars. If you focus on it strictly from a standpoint of efficiency, like you're not going to bring any kind of an excitement factor. And for a certain price point, for a lot of applications, people just want better mileage. Okay, fine. But there is an excitement factor potential if you add electric motivation, if you bring in a hybrid drivetrain to a car.
Sure.
I think Subaru's got to look at something like that.
Yep. Every high-end race series is using it right now.
Yep.
That's true.
But I think the driving factor for a lot of that stuff is something that Subaru's dealt with ever since emissions standards really started cranking down, which was brand average fuel economies.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so Subaru has always had worse fuel economy than Honda because Honda has half as many moving parts in their cars, right? Because they have half-wheel drive.
Well, and they're able to be more efficient. Like Honda they're really successful in making an efficient engine.
Yeah. Yeah, man, all-wheel drive hurts.
All-wheel drive hurts.
All-wheel drive hurts for fuel economy, right? And so something they've always struggled with. And as we march toward an internal combustion-free future, those brand average fuel economies in the background, behind, policy and government doors and stuff like that, they've marched further and further up.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that they haven't gone to an almost full EV lineup, maybe minus one or two vehicles, Subaru, because I can't imagine that they're... The move to the direct injection engines was a big step for them in trying to clean that up.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised that the mileage in the 2022 is not better.
What are you getting?
On average, I think it's 23.
Yeah.
Damn, that's horrible.
I'm surprised that it's not better.
Holy shit. I got a 93 Dodge that gets better mileage in that pickup with diesel in it.
And like
it rolls coal.
The emissions and everything like that
it's
it has to go through, it's making it more and more challenging.
And realistically, that's probably a large reason why the EJ died, right? It's because it was dragging the whole brand's average down.
That's what the Subaru guys, when Viet and I went out to the Rhine Drive for the new WRX and BRZ, that's kind of what the Subaru guys were saying, like when we pulled them off to the side, is that the STI always has the worst fuel economy of the Subaru fleet. That's getting the worst economy. Mm-hmm. And 2026 is this new big change, so like the CAFE standards have to go up. And they just didn't think that they could come out with an STI on this platform and hit a break-even point before they would not be able to sell it anymore, which is basically like if it came out as 23, like 3 model years. And so that's where it got kind of, just shoved to the side. Is that like, well, we can't make them and break even in the time before we're not going to be able to sell these things anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's where, like, okay, if you bring in the hybrid drivetrain, can you bring back some of that efficiency, that you can bring back some of the fun, and or even then, like, okay, you have a hybrid Outback and a hybrid Forester, which are the two best-selling lines that now get 40 miles to the gallon because of the hybrid drivetrain. And now does that open the window for okay, now you can have something of a limited production like an STI that is missing the CAFE standard, but now it evens out because you've got these a couple of these platforms that are like
Yeah.
way over the cafe.
Well, and it probably will just keep marching tighter and tighter, so you'll never get ahead of that.
Right.
Hole in the bucket.
Which is where, like, in some ways, like, okay, we're going to focus on the move to electrification. It's like, okay, it makes sense. If you're always going to be
right.
battling these emission standards, these fuel economy standards, kind of making the clean break. It's like, so trap number 1 is full self-driving, but maybe trap number 2 is, maybe hybrids. I don't know. I think there's an opportunity with hybrids, but maybe trying to make a fun, sporty hybrid, maybe that's another trap.
That could be a thing. I mean, I could see, like, like with my Prius and its hybrid system in it, something of that capacity in an FA power plant car like the 22.
Yeah.
Could be interesting. It would all be about how, like, the functionality was.
Yeah.
Where it was to bring that, cafe standard up. Because if you hearken to, like, look at Chevrolet.
Mm-hmm.
They still have a big fire-breathing Corvette that is a snotty monster. And then they have, like, they have the little cars, the Bolt
and now they have the E-Ray.
Yeah, and then, hence they've got the E-Ray coming up. So they've got, because they have the little cars that have hybrid powertrains and all these that bring their overall fleet mileage up, they can still have something that spits fire and roasts tire,
And there's more and more hybrids that are not just there for just straight efficiency. They're using electric motors more for torque fill.
Yeah.
I want to say, gosh, I'm trying to think of, there was some car recently that I was reading about where it was like the electric motors just give all of their torque down low to kind of get the internal combustion engine up more into its sweet spot, and then it switches over, so like it's a more seamless transition, and you get the sportier acceleration until the engine can then take over.
The current Ferrari WEC car does the opposite, which is interesting, and it's new enough that I don't know, I haven't seen a whole lot of information on what exactly their strategy is all about.
World Endurance Championship?
Yeah.
WEC?
So the Ferrari is now back in endurance racing.
Yep.
After whatever it was, 50 years or something.
Yeah.
And you listen to their car, and it's the talk of all the onboard, when the race announcers, go on board, and you hear it, motor, and then the hybrid system kicks in. Damn. And I don't know if that's like filling in where, like, you start, as you run into like aerodynamic inefficiency, you just need that much more power to push through it or something like that. I don't know what their strategy is, but I'm curious to see what that's all about and what that means. Because the implementation of hybrid power, or the use of it, the strategies for, either harvesting it or using it, I think we've seen that it can be a really interesting thing, especially in motorsports with Formula One, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And now with the WRC.
And now with the WRC as well. So that's interesting. I don't know that brands could give you that and maintain compliance, whether it's emissions or road standards, which then unfortunately goes back to downloadable content, right? User unlockability, like I certify I am on a racetrack.
Yeah.
You put in your special nuclear arm key, and then it allows you to go into like, Strat 1, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Full harvest, Strat 1, quality mode, and
so
whatever.
So one of the interesting things that's happening with hybrids, especially, or I guess most specifically plug-in hybrids, is something like, we've talked about it here, the RAV4 Prime.
Yeah.
That's an interesting platform because it has a big enough battery that you have a certain amount of electric-only range. So you can drive it as an electric car, or it has an internal combustion engine, you can drive it as a hybrid, or you can actually run it in a third mode where the internal combustion engine is running, but basically just as a generator to charge the batteries, and you're running on full electric. So we're getting to this point where the hybrid drivetrains, it's not just an electric motor that is working in conjunction with an internal combustion engine.
Right.
You're now getting to a point where both systems can work independently or cooperatively. And so that once you have both independent or both of them working together, now you have all these possibilities for how does the car drive? How does this work? What is it going to do?
Yeah.
And like that's where, like, if we're going to go down the hybrid path further, like that's, to me, that's the interesting possibility. The thing, my knee-jerk reaction that makes me worry about it is that's really complex. You have basically an electric car system, an internal combustion car system that are both working together like how reliable could it be?
It's one of the oldest designs, though, for electric vehicles.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, look at locomotives.
Sure. Yeah,
They've been diesel electric for a long time, and they're extremely efficient.
Yep.
And that's what the shit-eating grin I got on my face while you were talking was.
Yeah.
Was I wanted a diesel electric something. I don't know.
Right.
Just
I
something.
wanted to just hop in my whatever Yukon and just kick it on up to notch 8 and just just
Well,
move
even
on
like
through.
your Ram truck, like your Ram pickup, would be a phenomenal
It'd be
example
sweet.
of that.
And
right?
I don't know why the direction that right now like the logistics like semi truck industry has gone in is electric and not diesel electric. It doesn't. I don't get it. I mean, I think probably it's marketing to some extent, right? Like the Tesla truck and stuff. They want to be seen as like, oh, we're fucking going to Mars and we made a fucking semi. I mean, explicit E right there. We made a semi truck and cool.
Yeah. And I think the thing is that they need the battery technology. So if it's also in the trucking market, like that is this other big, justification for why we need to pour all of these R&D dollars into the battery technology to get it to the next level.
Yeah, it seems business minded, not results oriented though, right?
Could be.
Yeah, I'm not involved really in this industry at all. I'm a casual observer for all this stuff, but to my eyes, it seems like the semi-truck move, for example, as we wander way off in the scope creep of this podcast into all electric vehicles, is just a wild. It's not correct, I don't think. And a hybrid strategy. I don't know. My dad has a RAV4. It's not a plug-in one. But like you can get around for a little bit on EV, and it's sick. Yeah. Like it's nothing wrong with it. Even like first gen Priuses, I had dated a girl in high school that had one and rallied the hell out of that thing. Yeah. And traction control was horrible, but other than that, it was fine, right? Like
Well, in DP, so how many miles have you got on your Prius at this point? That's your daily.
It's 252,000, I think.
Which is crazy.
And it just runs like a top, and it'll go 26 miles an hour in full EV mode, and it gives me a message, excessive speed, and I think that's just hilarious. It's like, or excessive acceleration predicted. If I put it in EV mode and put it down, they get a message and a beep, like the nanny system is like, no, that's not what it's for. But when I had an ABS sensor out, I had no traction control, no stability control. Oh my god, that thing was a hooligan of a car. It was a riot for 90 horsepower.
Right. Well, and so like, Toyota seems to have really figured out the whole hybrid thing, and they're partnering close with Subaru's. Like in a lot of ways, like if Subaru's going to partner with anybody to develop a hybrid platform, I mean Toyota, they know what they're doing more than just about anybody else out there.
And they're still developing hard, right? Yeah. Like they're still at the top level of motorsport, whether it's rally or IMSA. They're hybrid cars that they're winning, and it's that's all right. This is still the area because there's no internal combustion trickle down really coming from Formula One anymore, right? Or from that top end, maybe a bit, right? Arguably, but it's not like whatever in the 70s, where they're like, cool, fuel injection, let's just trickle that on down.
The wildest part of what's going on in Formula One right now, and I talked about this with Micah on that recent podcast, is they're basically finding out ways to run engines excessively lean but still make power.
That's true.
Like crazy lean. That's true. what would destroy any current.
20+1. I've heard some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Which is wild. So I take everything back I just said.
Well, but that's it's such a different method of combustion. I think it's used in some generators, like industrial generators at this point. But there's no other vehicle that is using that kind of an engine and build strategy yet.
I mean, maybe that's our only hope to save the internal combustion motor.
Just super lean.
If we can keep this whole totally misguided meme about EV batteries being dangerous going, then
this is another podcast that I don't know enough about to even talk about yet. But synthetic fuel bears it's worth a discussion. I mean it seems bananas, but it is a thing.
Yeah. It carried the American Agricultural Society.
No, this is something totally different. This is it's not agricultural based. It's all this is what Formula One is going to be running on starting in 2026. That's how they're going to get to carbon neutral. Is they're running a synthetic fuel, and so more and more is starting to come out. Is I guess the technology is becoming more. People are becoming more aware of the technology. but it's starting to creep its way into motorsports. It's going to be what fuels Formula One in 2026, and they're literally synthesizing hydrocarbons from CO2 in the atmosphere.
I don't know. That feels like there was this movie. I guess it's because I have a 4-year-old son, but Cars 3, and they talk about all-in-all fuel that was like synthetic
that was
fuel.
Cars 2.
Like,
Cars
was that
2?
2? Sorry,
Cars 2.
Sorry, everybody. Bad dad.
Yeah.
Wasn't paying that much attention. But when they synthesized the fuel, and then it was all like there was all kinds of different corruption and things that went into that were really interesting. But that's where it feels like we're leaving.
This is where I don't know enough. I know that it's out there, and if it weren't for the fact that it was going to, like, the Formula One has basically signed off on it, and that's going to be their method of being carbon neutral going forward, I wouldn't have put nearly as much stock into it. But, like, Top Gear did a little 10-minute thing about it. I think I saw Donut Media now has come out with, like, hey, we put a tank of synthetic fuel in our car. I don't know. Like, that's the one other thing about that it's worth looking into, but that's going to be a topic for another time. But as we're winding down, like, here's
winding down?
Are we?
I'm still winding up.
All right.
Let's go.
Well, but here's the question. I think it could well be inevitable that Toyota and Subaru are going to merge at some point in the not too distant future. So, like all this electric talk stuff put aside, do you think that could be that in and of itself could be a good thing or bad thing for Subaru?
It's our best chance for having a rally-inspired Subaru again.
Absolutely. And, I mean, with the juggernaut that Toyota is, I mean, they have the resources and the engineering team to partner with Subaru that they could really make some awesome things happen.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that would make me excited about that merger, as long as Toyota didn't just basically bring Subaru underneath, like Scion, where, okay, well, now it's Subaru, but it's all actually Toyota. If they still kept Subaru, and let Subaru be its own its own company or have its own identity, the thing that Toyota brings, or that Toyota definitely appreciates more than most Japanese manufacturers at this point, is the importance of motorsport and pushing technology and building things for the enthusiast market, like the GR Corolla, the GR Yaris, that they've got the new Supra now. I mean, they seem to really be realizing that the enthusiast market is important. They went through a long stretch where they really didn't. There's very little in the Toyota showrooms for any kind of enthusiasts, but now they're realizing, hey, this is important, and motorsports is important. And Subaru, where they're still participating in motorsports, it's not anywhere near to what Toyota's doing. And like their grassroots, Toyota's support of grassroots motorsports, like with what they're doing with the GR Corolla and the GR86 Cups, like building race cars were, I mean, they're really expensive for most of us, but
grassroots.
But the fact that they have it out there,
it's something, right?
And they're helping, or they're creating a series using these cars. I mean, that's significant. And if Subaru could kind of, get a nudge to participate more in that way, I mean, I think that might be a good thing.
Yeah. The only thought that cruised through my head there, and it's another pipe dream, is that I wish Subaru would just become Dirty Mazda, where Mazda is like just the weird little tarmac drivers enthusiast cars.
Sure. Yeah.
I want Subaru just to just give up on being a good company like Mazda and just be the shitty little dirt person's enthusiast cars, and then the Outbacks are cool. Like there's a whole subset of Subaru people that like overlanding that probably wouldn't like this move, although maybe they would be wrapped up in it too,
Yeah.
You start getting, I don't know, I'm wandering off in my head because now the future is so weird. And the one thing that constantly is kind of in the back of my head as we have this conversation is that nothing that you expect to happen will happen, and then something you don't expect to happen will happen all of a sudden.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So when we sit there and we hem and haw about what the future of this is or that is or whatever, and there's a bomb waiting to drop somewhere right now that's something we don't expect, and that's the only thing that's guaranteed in this whole thing.
The only thing you can expect is the unexpected.
Yeah, and it happens fast.
Yeah.
And, good stuff usually can be derived from whatever this stuff is. Take Priuses, right? They have a weird little niche, like tuner market in themselves, right? You know, so you take the most unexpected little niches of car culture, and they find a way to survive in whatever little cockroach hole they have to hide out in for a while, right?
Yeah.
So it's
don't paint it in too bright a light there.
yeah, but we have been since the 70s a dying breed, right? Car people to some extent, and it changes, it moves, it's this and that. It, you know, kids these days just don't get it, and back in my day it was better. Will forever be.
That is basically what every car group of friends talks about.
Right.
Yeah.
Whenever they get together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it'll be fine. I
think
cares,
the cars will continue, but I guess the niche that I would say is like what we were talking about earlier, is like to build cars that are built around optimizing the driver experience, because that seems to be what is just getting chucked by the wayside at this point.
Yeah.
If Subaru CEO is still listening to this podcast after when you lit the fire under his ass to get that STI out, he probably got up right away and was like, all right, guys.
Yeah,
John said we got to get this going right now.
Yeah,
we
got 2026. Like, we got 2.5 years to do this. All right.
But so after he finishes that project, if he tunes back into this project,
he's gonna pick it back up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What I want, I think hill climbing is the perfect, like, rallycross, like the perfect venue for gravel hill climbing for all-wheel drive electric vehicles, because it's short format right now. Range is still a problem no matter what. You know, space batteries are coming. Whatever this ESTI looks like, it would be awesome to have a crack at one to try and make into a race car and figure out what the hell's going on. I don't want to necessarily, but I do want to at the same time. But it's a because even you look at the GR cars, right, and the fact that they were CAN bus, and as simple as like trying to get rid of ABS so you can actually slow down on those things,
you lose a lot.
Yeah, and that's a much older, simpler car than an ESTI. But I think that to have that opportunity could prove the concept to Subaru that they're still Subaru and not just Toyota Light. Right?
What I would say to that is, like, looking at hill climbs, like Pikes Peak Hill Climb is a good venue. Colorado Hill Climbs where you're on dirt, to 100% agree, to maximize and showcase the potential of what you can do with the electric drive system, with the ERA, for instance, with the 4 motors. I mean, the possibilities of what you could do with a gravel hill climb electric car with an electric motor on each wheel is huge. I mean, I think in one of the other podcasts I mentioned, like, you could have push-button diff behavior. Like, you don't have differentials. Like, okay, I want one-way front, 2-way rear, one-way front, 1.5-way rear.
Or map it based on GPS location.
You could create the behavior of whatever differentials you want if you had a motor on each wheel, and the advantage how you could use that to your advantage in a gravel hill climb is almost limitless. Yeah. But you'd have to build the car and then bring it to that environment to showcase that ability.
Right.
But I think that they have that 100%. They absolutely should do that. Like, they have not, other than their picked motorsports, you know, Rallycross and ARA Rally, they're not really bringing anything out to any of these other motorsports showcases.
And look at ARA, they're using arguably old cars, old tech. I mean, they're at least on direct injected motors for the last several years and stuff like that. But it's not super relevant to Subaru anymore, and ARA hasn't been for some time.
Well, and honestly, like, with this move and the prioritization of moving to electric, I mean, we talked about, I think, when the STI was killed off, like, okay, well, is Rally still going to be relevant if Subaru doesn't have an STI? And now, if they're really pushing hard to move to electric, and again, I think, Subaru being a small company, you don't have a lot of financial money that you can throw at all of the. You cannot spread your bet and invest in all of these different possibilities. If you're really going to move to electric, what does that look like?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it's.
Does that mean that they downsize their?
It's all been a perception game for a long time, anyways, right?
Sure.
Even at the high level. But take ARA. Even when the STI was still cruising around with EJs, Vermont Sports Car was getting their competition cars and putting FAs in them and stuff like that, right? They've been on direct injected 2 liters since long before the EJ was gone.
Yeah.
So it's the perception of being involved in motorsports is what Subaru is getting out of that deal with Vermont Sports Car.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And I don't know. I'm not involved with either of these companies. And this is with all due respect to both of these companies, because thank you for keeping American rallying alive.
Right. I mean, if Subaru was not participating to the degree that they would,
it would truly be the backwoods shit show that we
well,
all
I don't know that the area would even exist. I mean, there was it was Rally America before, and Rally America was having difficulties. That's where the ARA came from.
Yeah.
The Subaru moved over to ARA, and ARA is what now exists. But if Subaru wasn't there,
and we'll see with the WRC coming back to America what that means for manufacturers' involvement in this too. And unfortunately, the loss of Ken Block maybe was the last, to use a probably poorly timed analogy, the last nail in the coffin for American Rally, right?
But no, I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, he single-handedly brought millions of dollars into American motorsports.
That's true.
He brought
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Space. And Travis Pastrana is not running it this year.
No, because he's been focused on his own series,
right.
which allows him to be more Travis Pastrana-y.
Right.
Brandon Semenuk is an amazing mountain biker, and then a pretty good driver who has good backing, right? It's all been about the perception stuff, right? The 100% of the way through, and right outside of just ARA, the WRC as well, right? These aren't the Rally 1 Yaris is not a Yaris in any. It's the same space frame chassis that the other manufacturers are using with Yaris-esque bodywork on it,
right?
And then some Toyota parts in the drivetrain,
right?
Motorsports parts even at that. Not a. This is a gross oversimplification of what is a really complex subject.
Yeah.
But at the top end there, those motorsports have all been about being perceived. The corporate involvement in those motorsports is about being perceived as being involved with that, user base, right?
Well, maybe let's frame it this way. Subaru realizes that the participation in motorsports is important to a part of its brand.
For a pretty low investment at this point.
Right.
Right.
But they're still doing it, and they would not have continued to do it if they didn't feel that it was important. I mean, their rally heritage, that type of performance of that vehicle, I think they see that it's a value, and obviously they're still doing it, and it's something like with overlanding. Well, Subaru can build these cars that can go really fast under roads. Well, if they've got the Outback or Forester or Ascent or something,
right,
that I want to go camping with, well, they probably know how to make that car work well in this environment too.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, I'm not saying that there's a direct line there, but certainly Subaru sees a value in doing it, because if they didn't, why would they have continued to do it?
But look at, and I'd be curious, I don't know every in and out of Subaru's corporate, dealings and stuff like that. They haven't had a factory effort in some very long time, right?
Right.
It's all been satellite deals.
Well, I mean, you could argue, ProDrive wasn't part of Subaru, really, right. Even their WRC effort was kind of a satellite.
And that had pretty hefty factory involvement, at least, especially, and I don't know Vermont's, dealings or whatever like that, right, too, but from the outside looking in, the impression I have is that Subaru just gives a handful of parts and cars to Vermont Sports Car, and they're like, all right, have fun this year.
Right.
And it's the same kind of thing.
I mean, Vermont Sports Car seems to be very standalone, like ProDrive.
I mean, look at their e-car, right? It's a Vermont Sports Car product.
Right.
It's not a Ascent with e-motors in it or something like that, right? Or, so I'd be curious then, like in the AP rally stuff like that, the AP4 cars, like the Crosstrek that was over there. I'd be curious how much of the factory involvement there was there, or probably, though, Subaru's largest actual factory involvement in motorsports is like the Nürburgring run, maybe, right?
Yeah, with the STI. Well, or no, the Super GT over in Japan where they're running the BRZ.
No, that's true. They're still, yeah. It's
okay.
I mean,
but
and
that's
not
one
even an
car.
all-wheel drive chassis.
No, but it's the BRZ,
right.
And it is based on BRZ. But there was only one. Now there's two of them because they've got the new body style. They finally won the championship, which is amazing. But
Is that a true factory effort? Like, is that coming out of STI's garages?
That is, STI is fully supporting, building and supporting
that. And the Nürburgring car maybe are the only Subaru factory efforts in motorsports that exist. And so it's curious, and I would love to hear from Subaru directly, because that means 75% of their car sales are here, but 100% of their motorsports investment dollars are not where their market is.
They're probably writing a reasonably large check to Vermont Sports Car to keep all of that going, and they're the title sponsor for the ARA. I think we could say that the investment or the priority of the ARA versus the Nürburgring 24-hour challenge and then the GT300 BRZ, I think those are all Subaru funded. It's probably Subaru of America, which is funding the Vermont Sports Car and ARA, and then Subaru Japan, which is doing the GT300 BRZ. I don't know where the Nürburgring comes in. I think that's actually tied in with STI as well. I think Subaru Japan is involved with that car in its development also.
And watching those videos, those guys had STI badges on.
Yeah.
Like
seems
employment.
Like.
So So I guess to bring it all around, Subaru, if you really want to get back to your roots, get me an ESTI and I'll hill climb it.
That's fair.
That is fair. I would love to see that, really. I think the potential is huge there with like what you could do with the motors and all that for your like hill climb and all the things that in that realm would just be a perfect setup. And slowing it down, with not just with a brake pedal, but using like from construction where I came, hydrostatic type technology where you lift and now you're slowing down. Would really be huge to upset the car to get it to rotate and all that.
Yep, and toughness too, right? I mean, it's something that the rallycross cars are touching on, but I don't know of another electric vehicle that is getting like durability testing of a rally type environment.
And honestly, like durability testing in a harsh environment like that, that is justification for like, okay, whatever this early electric STI is going to be, like electric rallycross would be an awesome platform to test it, and showcase what can be done, the possibilities of the platform. It all comes back to using motorsports as the showcase.
Yes.
You cannot lose sight of how important a showcase motorsports is. Like this is also your point about like gravel hill climbs, showcasing the possibility there, and keeping the enthusiast in mind with the product versus just letting Hal drive the car and all that jazz. Like there's. If you want to keep people interested in cars, you have to keep the cars interesting.
Yes. And that all comes down to one person in the right place. And throughout history, it's routinely come down to one person in the right place in order to keep motorsports going. So hopefully, electrification of Subaru is the way of the future for Subaru Motorsports.
Let's hope. I think that I'm excited about the move because I think they have to make this kind of a shift to stay relevant like 10 years from now. Like if they put all their eggs if they put all their eggs in an internal combustion engine basket and didn't make any kind of moves towards hybrid or electric, like would Subaru even be around in 5 to 10 years? They might just get gobbled up by Ford, somebody else,
Volkswagen,
Toyota. But I think this gives them the best chance to have their own identity and to do it their way. And I think we've pretty well laid out what we would recommend as far as their prioritization for the process. So, yeah. But if you've stuck around with us to this point, let us know what you think. Put it in the comments. Let us know what do you think about this move that Subaru's doing. And do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing? Do you think it has potential of both? What do you think they need to do?
Write your congressman. Tell him to tell Subaru to get me an ESTI.
Yes, let's get Tasso an ESTI.
We need a letter writing campaign or an email campaign to get OTC Racing an ESTI for testing. And
I'm going to need a bigger multimeter too.
Okay.
Because I don't think mine can do that much.
And a multimeter.
Yeah. Well, if we
get the ESTI, maybe we can figure out
my laptop only has one USB port too. I feel like I'm going to need more USBs.
Okay.
To tune this.
I don't know.
It's going to be Wi-Fi, probably.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, yes. Thanks very much for watching. This is probably as good a place to end as any. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support as always. And until next time, stay tuned to the Flat Irons Tuning.
All right. Now outtakes.
Now outtakes?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right, so let us know what you really think. All right.
The silence speaks volumes.
Long draw in the coffee. Caffeine is starting to percolate through the brain.
I drove a GR and actually wasn't horrible on dirt.
Yeah?
A GR what?
I don't know, wagon.
Oh, GR wagon.
Oh. I thought it was like a GR
No,
Cross.
no,
I want to know.
not a Toyota GR. No,
Oh.
no. So maybe everything I believe in isn't true.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning.